I do think it's important to try and connect because we're the outsiders. They're the ones that live here, like they're the ones that have grown up here, they're the ones that have history here. And so I think if we're going to choose to plop ourselves down here for 4 years of our life, we're walking into their territory, and there's a strong need for us to connect with them and understand them and acclimate to the culture that they've created, not make them acclimate to a culture that we've created.
Yes, I think there's a bubble between APU and Azusa. I think the APU doesn't have a very good, most of APU student body doesn't have a very good understanding of the idea of privilege and power, and many of the students who come to APU are part of a very privileged central social group, and so they don't really have any desire to connect with the community around them, and they use their privilege and power in ways that are damaging instead of constructive. I don't know, I think that APU has created sort of a microculture of rich and white male power, and I don't think it's healthy, and I think it deconstructs Azusa as a whole city. That's what I think.
As a Christian university, our goal is to outreach to people that have needs that we can try and help. And we have a great opportunity in this city to reach out to a bunch of people and to change some lives for the better.
APU and the Azusa community are a total disconnect. Not only do we abuse the city financially, we demonize the people that live there. We don't take the time to go visit the neighbors, you know. Why not fix the dangerous parts of Azusa by having a block party? Getting together, getting to know your neighbors. Even then, that would actually alleviate some of the fears. Fear is caused by being, I don't know, not knowing who you're sitting around, not knowing who you're living around. Every day you see mothers and their babies walking to work, you know, walking to school, and the only thing we like to do is just go tutor them and leave. We then never get to know their names, never get to know their families. I see that's a really big disconnect with APU and Azusa. Do we even care? Do we even care? Or are we just content with paying $36,000 to go to chapel and be fed all this social construction? I don't know.
I guess, I don't know, I feel like it takes me a while just to even like formulate a thought on that, because I feel like I don't go through my days even usually like having the community outside of APU on my mind. Like I feel like so much of APU ideology is wrapped up in kind of like we're really focused on the idea of community, but I think a lot of times that focus kind of stays here, and so I feel like I spend so much of my concern on the APU community, like within the four walls of APU, that I don't know, I feel like I go through most days struggling to even like find space to think about outside of APU.
When I worked at the library, not the APU library, I worked at the Azusa Public Library. I became friends with this family. They have a little daughter who doesn't speak any English, and I just read to her for a good 2 hours every other day, and yeah, I hung out with them, and I see them now at the park sometimes and playing, and they still come up to me and say hi, so yeah.
I think it's good for APU to work directly in Azusa, because a lot of times people go to LA or like CMIN Africa or something like that, but I think that if we don't work directly in Azusa, then it still creates the bubble. You know what I mean? Like we don't get outside of directly APU, then we're just moving from our bubble and jumping and then coming back instead of like interacting with the community too. Because I think I think it's good, and I think people have passions about like working in LA, especially since it's like Skid Row and going to the places. Like some of my friends and I are going to South Africa this summer, but I think it's important to work specifically with Azusa because there's more like lasting relationships too. Because when you go to LA, it's easy to like go for a day and then come back. But I think
okay, I mean, I guess there's just a problem essentially like in the language whenever you say like ministering to Azusa, because it sets up kind of I don't know, it sets up APU in this position of I don't know power, and you know the city of Azusa is a lot more like socioeconomically like disadvantaged than the people at APU are the ones needing to be ministered to. So it just sets up this kind of like paradigm that kind of associates, socioeconomic well-being with, with Christianity and with faith, and kind of equates like APU, which is very affluent, like environment, as the Christian presence, and Azusa, which is far less socioeconomically advantaged at in the place of like those needing to be ministered to. So that's it.
I think that the Azusa Pacific students are not very encouraged to think outside the box when it comes to ministry options in Azusa. Most of the options have to do with tutoring, and while that is a great ministry, it's not necessarily very holistic. It's something that's very familiar to many students who may have participated in homework help in high school. The APU property takes up a great portion of the school, and yet, a great portion of the city, and yet students often know more about Glendora than they do about Azusa. So I think a ministry that really helps familiarize people with Azusa, such as Azusa 101, is really good. But something that's more holistic, that gets people integrated not only with the community, but in such a way that would help to better the community and not just a few students. Also, I think it's a problem that APU dominates the city in such a way that we want them to come to us. I think it would be much more effective for us to go out into the community with the objective of learning, number one, and then helping in what ways we see fit that we've learned from those people that are in the community, because they actually know best.